Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Reading this morning, I do appreciate that. Okay. It says here that I'm supposed to read a passage out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd been. Oh, okay. Right up. Oh, is that better? How about that? I was told I was supposed to pick a passage out of the big book, and I had a couple picked out, something really profound, and through the course of the weekend, they all got stole. So, with that being said, I struggled and I struggled, and I remembered my old sponsor, Mr. Larry W. He's gone now, but he said, boy, he said, start at the beginning. Start at the beginning. So that's what I did. I kind of fumbled through the first few pages, didn't have a whole lot to say on there. But then I ran across this. This is a forward to the first edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It says here, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. When I first came in here, hopeless, beat down, broken. That was one of the first things I read that gave me hope. And if there's anybody in here struggling today, I find that the words I just read and everything else in this book is absolutely true. It has been my experience. So thank you very much. Now it's time to introduce the speaker. I wish I had a whole lot to say. I just met the gentleman. Don't know him, but I do know him. He's just like us. He's recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And he's here today to tell us how he's done it. So without further ado, Mr. Chuck H.
My name is Chuck Hartley. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. By the grace of God and the actions of Alcoholics Anonymous and a good sponsor, I've been sober since December 16th, 1988. It tickles me every time I get to say it. I'm glad that all 2,000 of you came back this morning. I would say I'd like to thank the committee for inviting me down here, but initially my plan was just to tag along with Beth and be Mr. Beth and cheer her on. And I must have did a good job because she did a wonderful job. She made a really good talk. Jay made a good talk on Friday, and Kent made a good talk last night. Angela made a good Al-Anon's talk. So I'm not a Sunday preacher type. I heard Kent last night, and I could have swore I was in church. I felt the Holy Spirit moving in me. But I've had a great time this weekend. I've been drug all over the place. Jeanette's been real good about taking us places and showing us local stuff, mostly local food. I only weighed about 190 when I got here. So that was fun. I shouldn't be an alcoholic. My parents, neither one of them are alcoholic. My dad's side of the family, you can't even find anybody that's ever had a drink. My mom's side of the family, however, let's say they're not up in the family tree. They got drunk and fell out. They're all at the bottom. And so I guess, even though my parents didn't suffer from this disease, it wasn't too far off in my bloodline. And I really enjoyed drinking. It changed my outlook on life. And I was able to do things that I couldn't do when I was sober. Couldn't talk to women when I was sober. I couldn't ask one to dance when I was sober. Couldn't mingle and tell jokes and carry on conversations when I was sober. But when I was drunk, I could do all of those things for about 10 minutes. And then the liquor would kick in, and I wasn't a very nice drunk. I had a normal childhood. I still haven't met anyone that got kicked out of kindergarten. I got suspended from kindergarten. And I needed a sponsor. I needed somebody I could call up that would say, "Oh, for God's sakes, Chuck, eat the cookie, drink the milk, and take the nap." And, I didn't have any of that. So I ran around and got in trouble a lot. My kids like to run around a lot in school too. And we took them to a doctor, and he gave them Ritalin. We didn't have Ritalin when I was a boy. We had paddling. And boy, did I get a bunch of that. I almost OD'd on paddling. My father was a personnel director of a big factory in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I grew up. And he wouldn't get bonuses like you hear about, in these companies today where they give out big bonuses. So we could have used that. They gave my dad a bottle of liquor each time he did anything right. If he went out of town and made a good presentation, he got a bottle of liquor. If he made it another year with the company, he got a bottle of liquor. If it was Christmas time, he got another bottle of liquor. So he was bringing home 6 or 7 bottles a year and wasn't drinking none of them. And he thought he had a stash down in the basement, but I found that stash before I even started to drink. And I white-knuckled it till I was about 12 years old. And by the time I was 12, I needed a drink. And because like Kent said last night, I never felt a part of my family. I kept waiting for my real family to come show up at the front door. Okay. I just didn't fit in with those nice people. But when I needed that drink when I was 12, I knew where the stash was, and he almost had an ABC store in there, or liquor store, or whatever y'all use down here. And so I went, and I didn't know anything about drinking, so I went and got the prettiest bottle I could find. It was clear glass, and it was cut glass. It was a real pretty bottle. Turned out to be Seagram's Extra Dry Gin, though. And that stuff was nasty. Tastes like perfume. But we got it down. I took a couple of buddies, and we went out in the woods. And I took a drink. They each took a drink. By the time it got back to me, I knew if we passed it around again, those two Bogarts would finish that fifth. So I drank the rest of it right down. And that stuff hit bottom and curled my toes and came back up and curled my hair. And all of a sudden, well, I understood then. I don't understand now, but I understood then the keen alcoholic mind, because I was full of ideas, and I wanted to go places and do something about that. And me and my buddies did that. We went around for a while, and then the liquor really kicked in, and I started getting mean, and I started talking bad about their mamas, and they beat me up and took me home, left me on the front stoop, rang the doorbell, ran away into the night like the cowards that they were. And my parents came to the front door, and they did the only Al-Anon type thing that I think that night, and they ever tried to do since. They just weren't equipped for 3 alcoholic sons. They dragged me into the living room and just left me there, and they went back to bed. And sometime during the night, one of my brothers snuck downstairs and threw up on me. I can't get them to admit it. But I was pretty sure it was them. And I was grounded for life and didn't care. I knew I was going to drink again. And there's no locks on my bedroom door. I just walked right out the front door. And my mom would be yelling from the front porch what a no good son I was. And I'd just be walking down the street with another fifth of whiskey. My poor mother, she gave birth to 5 sons, and 2 of them died when they were infants, and the other 3 of us are all alcoholic. So my mom lived her whole life in a homemade robe. It went all the way down to her ankles, and inside were pockets, sewn on both sides, pockets all the way down. And if my mom had anything of value to her, it went in the robe. Her wallet went in there, her car keys went in there, her cigarettes went in there, old photographs went in there, recipes went in there, fake jewelry, real jewelry. Anything my mom found valuable to her, it went in the robe. Because 3 of us were thieves long before we were drinking. And that's saying something, because I'm the oldest, and I started drinking when I was 12, and my 2 brothers caught me drinking. They said, cut us in or we'll tell. I made the youngest brother 7 years old, and he was getting drunk. And 1968, I was supposed to go to high school. We had 7 through 12 high school. We had 5,000 or 6,000 students. graduating classes of 1,000. It was a huge high school. And it was probably about 80% African American. And Martin Luther King had just been killed. And there's really no place for a little tiny 7th grader to be hanging out. It was dangerous at my high school. They had armed National Guardsmen walking the highways, hallways to make sure nothing bad happened. So I just went to the woods and drank. And it worked out pretty well, but they didn't have computers and stuff to keep up with you back then. And the classes were so big that they didn't, you know, if you were there and you were doing a good job, you got an A, and if you're there and you were a troublemaker and didn't do anything, you were a F, and everybody else got a C. So by the time they found out I wasn't going to school, I was a rising junior with a C average. And I hadn't been to school a day, but I was old enough to quit by the time they caught me, so I quit. And when I turned 18, my dad gave me a job in that factory, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's not good to have good luck, you know. I mean, that job paid good money, so I always had a pocket full of money on Friday anyway. And so I had a nice apartment, a nice car, and when I start drinking, I get itchy feet, and I like to go places. I want to come to Gonzales and party with you guys. And, so I fill up the tank and come to Gonzales. Well, almost Gonzales. I made New Orleans. And, you know, I'd get drunk and go to California because Ohio was my problem. Every time I got to California, I found out my daddy wasn't the personnel director of anything out there. And there weren't a whole lot of job openings for guys like me with a 6th grade education. When I turned 18, I ran in a car that I had into the back of the old 1955 station wagon, and it didn't give. I didn't even put a dent in the bumper. And, well, it busted up the car I had. It busted clean through the radiator, and I got out of there as quick as I could and went home. About 10 minutes after I was home, the police were knocking on the door. I wondered how they caught me, and they told me they followed the radiator leak to the house. So I was a criminal, but I wasn't a very good one, you know. I would always seem to get caught. And as a result of that, I did about 5 years on the installment plan down at the local workhouse. I'm going to open this. I don't know what to do with the cap. You know y'all don't do nothing with the cap, do you? Not the way we drank. And so I got a DUI, and the judge that I drew was up for re-election, and he was on a platform of being hard on DUIs. And he got with me, and he said, you've got a choice. You can either go to prison for a year, or you can join the Army. And I asked him if I could have a couple of days to think about it. Well, back then, my neighborhood was blue-collar neighborhood, so, the young men that were turning 18 were either going to penitentiary or they were going to the service. And not everybody in my neighborhood that went to Vietnam came home. And everybody in my neighborhood that went to prison came home. So I went to the old timers like we're taught to do here, down at the bar. They were probably about 30. And I talked to them, and they told me I'd be better off joining the Army. And I asked them why, and they said, "You drink too much to go to the penitentiary." I took their advice and joined the Army. And I'm a blackout drinker, so about half my life is hearsay. I can only talk for about 10 minutes about me, and then the rest of the time it's just stuff that people close to me have told me that I did or didn't do over the years. And so I'd love to stand up here and tell you all some great stories about being in the military. I worked with veterans before I retired, and I helped them get their benefits. And man, those guys always had some great stories to tell. And they'd ask me to tell one of mine, and I said I didn't have any. I know they got bars in Germany. Mirrors on the wall, tacky carpet. That describes about half the bars in Cincinnati, too. And they had real good outside issues there, too. And I don't talk much about them. This is Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but those darn outside issues almost got me kicked out. But I skated to the end and ended up barely getting an honorable discharge. And I was about 2 steps short of going to Leavenworth. I was always doing something I shouldn't be doing. And I don't take orders very well. Imagine that. So I got out of the service and went back to Ohio, and my dad's company was thriving. I ended up making double what I was making before I went in the service, and I was making pretty good money before I went in the service. So I bought a nicer car. I bought a Corvette, and I had a nicer apartment. Got one over in Clifton, Ohio, which is right by the University of Cincinnati, where all the pretty girls are at. And, well, I treated that Corvette, though, the way I treated anything else. I'd get a buzz going, get itchy feet, and start driving places to meet people. And I don't know. I left Cincinnati 3 times to go to California. I went to California 3 different times with 3 different groups of people, took 3 different modes of transportation. And every time I got there, I had seemed to have brought myself along. And like I said earlier, my dad's the personnel director in Cincinnati, and I got nothing coming anywhere else. I just didn't have any skills. I drank too much. I always drank too much, and things that people thought they were teaching me were just going over my head or through my ears. And so I ended up moving to the woods, and because I couldn't keep a job, even with my dad being the boss, I couldn't keep a job. And I'd drink every day, however I could. And one day I was visiting my mother, and she said, you know your dad's been sick for a while. And I said, yes, ma'am, I know. And she said, it's always been his dream to retire to Florida. And I said, yes, ma'am, I know that. And she said, well, we're going to move to Florida in a couple of weeks. And I said, that's great. I hope you guys enjoy it. She said, I want you to do me a favor, Chuck. I said, what's that, Ma? She said, don't ever come to Florida. Now, it's pretty bad when your own parents don't want you to come to their house. I wasn't allowed in nobody's house. My mom's the youngest of 10 kids, and the 5 kids that she gave birth to is the least amount of kids that her 9 brothers and sisters had. So I got all kinds of cousins, and they're all, a couple of them are older than my mother. Got all kinds of second cousins, and I wasn't allowed in none of their houses because I'd steal from them. You know, I told y'all I was a thief and not a very good one. But if I went in my cousin's house and stole from him and he caught me, all he would do is maybe beat me up and throw me out in the front yard and tell me I couldn't come back. And I'd be like, that's all right, I got 1,001 other cousins, I don't need you. And it didn't take long for me to not be welcome at any of their homes. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But I had a job and a car and a little bit of money. I was drinking some whiskey, and it was a pretty day, and it didn't have to be whiskey or a pretty day, but what I did was I drove my car into the back of a Mercedes-Benz and tried to leave the scene of the accident, but my car wasn't going anywhere. I really killed my car. And there were cops all over the place. I mean, I've been arrested before and seen 3 or 4 cops, but there must have been a dozen cops that came to that accident. It appears I had run my car into the back of a graduation present that the local police captain had bought for his daughter. And that was my 9th DUI. And I knew I was going to prison. I got all kinds of tickets from that accident. I got a DUI, I got a attempt to flee, I got a probation violation, and assaulting a police officer, and I think I spit on him, and just all kinds of little stuff like that. No driver's license, no insurance. Well, when you got 9 DUIs, nobody's going to give you insurance or a license. All I needed was a key. And I sat down at the workhouse with no bond, because when you got a probation violation, same offense you were put on probation with, you don't get no bond. And I sat down there waiting, and guy came up and said, I saw your name on the bond board for $100. I didn't believe him, but I went over and checked. And there it was, my name on the bond board, $100 next to it. Well, you never seen a little fat guy run so fast in all your life to get to the telephone. And I got the phone, I called my youngest brother, because My parents did all they could to keep us out of the penitentiary, and they did okay with a couple of us, but my brother John was going to the penitentiary because they ran out of money, and they felt bad about that. So they'd send him money every once in a while just to try and even things up. And I called John, and I said, you need to call Mom and Dad, and I don't care what kind of story you tell them, but tell them you need $100. And they felt bad, so they sent $200. And he bailed me out of jail, gave me that other $100, and turned and walked away. I said, where are you going, man? He said, I'm going home. I said, well, take me with you. I got some serious thinking to do. I got to get a plan together. And nothing funnier than listening to an alcoholic's plan. But he said, you can't come to my house. I said, why not? He said, my wife hates you. And I said, that's okay. I don't like your wife either. I said, take me to Bill's house. And he said, well, I was talking to Bill before I came down here. And Bill said, you can't come to his house either. I said, why not? He said, Bill and his wife hate you. So I did what any good alcoholic would do. I took that $100, and the first thing I did was buy a bottle of liquor, because that's how I did my best thinking. And I came up with a plan. I went over to Greyhound, bought a bus ticket to Florida. And a day later, I was knocking on her door. And my parents would ask me not to come to their house, but they would always open the door and let me in. And they did that time too, and they fed me and cleaned me up. And I don't know how my dad did it, but he ended up meeting some people, and he got me a job at the local hospital cleaning floors. And I lost that job pretty quick. I was drinking every day and, forgetting things all the time and going into DTs. And, it was the beginning of the end. It took me about 2 more years. We came to Ohio to bury my father when he died. And a buddy of mine, one of those 2 guys that went to the woods with me, helped my mom bury her husband because I couldn't help her. I was too drunk. And sometime during that week, he took me aside, and he 12-stepped me. He didn't say a word about my drinking or my actions or anything else. He just told me about his drinking, how it affected him and his life and his family. When he got done, I said, well, you probably need to stop drinking. I was not ready to come to AA. I spent 2 more years out in the woods, drinking liquor any way I could get it. And going into the DTs and waking up and drinking and going and passing out and going into the DTs and waking up and drinking and passing out. Just became a regular thing. It's like Groundhog Day. And one day I'd had enough. I had a little bit of change in my pocket. I was staying in a little hobo shack on the Little Miami River. It was, 4 walls and dirt floor and a tar paper roof, and that was it. And I got out of that place, and my plan was to go up to this local knife and gun club where I drank at from time to time, and get me a big pitcher of draft beer, and just turn around and smack the biggest guy in the place with it right in the mouth, so I could get beer-assisted suicide going. And I got up to the bar, and it wasn't open yet. So I sat down and waited for the bar to open, and I looked across the street, and there was a pay telephone. And something crossed my mind. I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened, but I'm glad it happened. Something crossed my mind that said, I wonder if Greg's still sober. And I went over there and gave him a phone call. And he assured me he was still sober. And I said, can you help me? He said, I sure can. Where are you at? And I told him. He said, oh, crap. It was in a really bad part of town. And he didn't really want to drive there, but he did. And, by that time, I couldn't read or write. My hair was down the middle of my back. My beard was down in my belly. Everything was growing every which way. And I stunk because I didn't take a bath very often. And I didn't have any teeth because I thought I could fight, but I couldn't. I always end up chewing on somebody's boot. And this guy I'd known all my life pulled his car down there and took a look at me and started to cry. And he got me into his car and he drove me to his house and he carried me in his house and he put me on his couch. And like Chuck Chamberlain used to say, he rocked me to sleep. Because when you're living out in the woods, you can't sleep real good. You kind of got to keep one eye open because there's always something going on, and whatever it is going on, it ain't no good. But I knew I was safe in his house, so I went to sleep real sound. When I came to, his wife was feeding me all kinds of sugary stuff because she heard that was good for guys like me. I was getting candy, and I thought that was good. When she ran out of candy, she gave me orange juice and carrot syrup, and that was terrible. But it worked. And I couldn't read or write. He had two kids that were 12 and 10. They were teaching me how to read out of the big book. And I had to learn how to clean up my language there, because I brought the language of the streets into Greg's house. And his kids said, we don't know what half that stuff means, but we know it ain't no good. And if you don't quit talking like that, we're going to tell our dad and he'll kick your butt. So I got to learn how to read and clean up my mouth all at the same time. And one night, wasn't soon after he brought me to his house, Greg came home from work and saw his whole family hovering over me, trying to take care of me. And he just said, go get in the car. And I said, why? Where are we going? He said, don't worry about it. I've checked your calendar. There's absolutely nothing in it. So I got in his car, and he came out a couple minutes later. We went to an AA meeting. And he took me to speaker meetings early on because he didn't want me soiling a good discussion. And I got to the chip taking place, and a guy stood up and said, I got 2 years. And I stood up right behind him, and I said, you're a daggone liar. Because I didn't know anybody. Greg said he had 2 years, but I didn't believe him. And I wasn't going to call him a liar. I was living in his house. And that guy I said was a liar. He's still sober today. And Greg kept taking me to this meeting because they'd have a speaker meeting, and then they had 2 offshoot discussion meetings, a beginner's meeting and a regular meeting. And if you got a newcomer like I was, hold on to him when you take him to meetings, because I lost Greg one night, and I wandered into the discussion meeting. And when it got around to me, I stood up and gave him all my experience, strength, and hope of about 3 days. And this old timer pointed at me and he said, "Boy, you need to shut up and sit down." And he wasn't quite that nice about it, but that's what he said. And I said, "Old man, you need to go out the window." And, I started to go grab him and throw him out the window, and we were on the 2nd floor of a really big church. And you guys gang tackled me. You wouldn't let me throw that old timer out the window. Y'all gang tackled me. And I couldn't hit or kick or nothing. You guys were laying on me. I tried to bite a few of you, but I didn't have any teeth. And all the while I'm thrashing and you guys are holding me down, the old man is pointing at me going, "Keep coming back, boy, keep coming back." Now, I've showed myself all over the place, everywhere I drank. I showed out, and but Alcoholics Anonymous is the only place where I acted like a jerk and they said, "Come back anyway." And, you know, it made me feel good that even though I knew I'd made a mistake, that I was still allowed back. And Greg thought it was time to start taking the steps, and he had one of those sponsors that said, when Greg was going through the steps, he said, "Show me a place in here, Greg, where it says after we complete step 2, we took a week off." And Greg couldn't find it in there, and so he became one of those sponsors that took you through the steps really fast. I mean, you know, he was like, "Do you believe you're powerless over alcohol?" And I said a couple of smart aleck things, and he got mad, and I could tell, so I told him the truth. I've caused a real commotion. I think somebody was late for church. And so I said, "Greg, if I take a couple of drinks, I can't tell you what state I'll be in the morning." And he said, "That's powerlessness." And he said, "Do you believe that your life is unmanageable?" And before I could answer him, he said, "Wait a minute, you're living on my couch." That's an unmanageable life. And we went on to step 2, and he said, "You better hope there's a power greater than you that'll restore you to sanity, because you're the craziest SOB I've ever met in my whole life." He said, "Now get on your knees." I said, "Greg, I love you and all, but I'm not quite ready to do that." And he said, "No, dummy, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about we're going to pray." And I wasn't real sure I wanted to do that either. Yeah. Because I came to AA and believed in God, but the God that I had was small, mean, and vengeful. And I figured that he didn't like me any, or I'd have had a better life. But we said the prayer. And Greg said, "Do you believe that I believe in God?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, you're a nut for God. Every time they open up the church, you're down there, you're helping people out. God this and God that. You're a nut." And he said, "Good. From now on, whenever you start your praying, I want you to start praying, 'Dear Greg's God.'" And I prayed to Greg's God for a couple of years before I could get to a place where my God was so big I couldn't understand him, and I stopped trying. And that I knew he would help solve my problems as long as I tried as hard as I could. He made up the rest of the difference every single time. And it's been working like that for me ever since. You know, I don't struggle with life anymore, because life is going to happen. You know, good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen, illnesses are going to happen, people close to you are going to pass. That's going to happen, and I just give it all to God and tell him I'm going to put myself into the equation for as much as I can, and I ask him to please make up the rest, and he has every single time. And Greg helped me write my 4th step. When we were done, he said, "I know just about everything on this step, and I haven't hung out with you all these years." He said, "Tell me the 3 things you were holding back." Now, if he'd have said 2 things or 4 things, y'all might have a different speaker. But I had 3 things that I wasn't going to tell anybody, ever. And I told him about them. And when we did our 5th step, we prayed and invited God into the room so that we could include him in my 5th step. And I talked to Greg about the things that I'd done and how it made me feel, parts of my life that I thought it affected, and what my part was in the problem. And we moved on to steps 6 and 7, and I think that's where I've grown the most as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. It taught me about humility, and it taught me about growing up, being a citizen, to do what I say I'm going to do and be where I say I'm going to be when I said it and where I said I would be. And I vote in elections, and I don't just go and poke holes anymore. I actually review what's going on so that I can vote with my mind instead of my heart. And I try to treat other people with respect and love. Steps 8 and 9, I'm glad Greg said hold on to this 4th step. We're going to need it later. Because I had all of that and then some on my 8th step. And step 9, we went through and we put numbers next to each one of them. If we put a 1 next to it, it meant I was willing and able to make the amends. If we put a 2, it meant I was willing but not able, or able and not willing. And 3 meant I wasn't never going to make amends to that guy. And it was funny how it worked out. When I did all my ones, as I did all my ones, my twos moved up to ones, and my threes moved up to twos. And by the time I got what I thought was done, there was just one more thing left on the list. And that was making amends for that 9th DUI. And I wasn't ever going to do that. Greg said, you got to make amends for that 9th DUI. So I did. I went downtown and turned myself in. And they said, you know, the jail's full tonight. We think anybody that's been gone as long as you that turned himself in, you're a pretty good bet to come back in the morning. So why don't you go home and get a good night's sleep? So when I stood in front of the judge the next day, I had a suit and a tie on instead of workhouse blues. And I stood in front of the judge and told him what my last year had been like, that I'd come to AA and really listened and did what was asked of me, that I had a God that was not me and was powerful enough to solve all my problems. And when I got done, he said, as to the count of this DUI, I find you guilty. And I knew I was guilty and knew I was going to prison. And he said, I have every right to send you to the penitentiary. And the citizens of Hamilton County almost demand that I send you to the penitentiary. And I said, yes, sir, I know that. He said, I'm not going to send you to the penitentiary. I said, why not? Once I got over the shock of not having to go to the penitentiary. He said, the man that had all of those DUIs isn't in the courtroom today. There's a new man standing here today, and he needs a chance to go on and become that new man without having to go to the penitentiary and living that life for quite some time. So if you're new and you got some outstanding charges, and you said, I'm going to do what Chuck did and just turn myself in, remember that this is my story and how it worked out. I don't want you to come see me after a 3 to 15. And I've had a great time in Alcoholics Anonymous. My wife used to come clomping into AA meetings late. She's an accountant, and they have to work weird hours. And she used to like to wear motorcycle boots or some kind of boot. I could hear her coming. And she'd sit down, and everybody would swarm around her. I thought she was the president of AA. What it was people wanting free tax advice. I didn't know that till later. And I asked her if she'd like to go out, and she said, yeah. And I went and talked to the old timers because I didn't know how to date. You know, guys that live in the woods don't date much. So I went to the old timers, the real old timers, guys that were sober 30, 40 years. And they said, Chuck, first you need a willing participant. And I said, I got that. And they said, good. Now, you have to decide where you're going to take her. We suggest that you go around 6 o'clock to Perkins and drink some coffee, and then come to an AA meeting at 8 o'clock, and then take her home. And I thought that was the craziest advice I'd ever got. They told me walk her up to the door and hold the doors open, don't shut them on her, and say goodnight. And I said, I know what to do next. I come in the apartment. And they said, no, you're not going into the apartment. You're going to thank her for a wonderful evening. You're going to wait till she shuts and locks her door. And then you're going to leave. Well, I'd never heard that way of dating before, but I had decided to try whatever AA said, so I tried it. And it worked out all right. We got to know each other and fell in love and eventually got married. And July 11th, we celebrated 21 years of marriage. And each year's been better than the year before. I love her with all my heart. She's my best friend. And she brought a couple of children into the marriage and told me before we got married that she couldn't have any more children. So if I was planning on having children, we should stop seeing each other before we get too involved. And I just told her I was 35 years old and hadn't had any children yet. Her kids were 8 and 6 when we met. And I told her I'd never changed a diaper, and with kids that old, I never will. And it was okay. And I raised those kids like they were my own. They treat me like their father, call me dad. And they're good kids. Beth told you about what they were doing yesterday, and they're just good kids. I'm glad to be a part of their lives. My mom didn't pass until I was 13 years sober. And when I was new, she came back to Ohio and took an apartment across the street from my sponsor's house. And I went over and talked to her and asked her if I could pay half the bills, could I move in? And she was on a fixed income, and she loved me and wanted to get to know me sober, so she said, sure. And I moved in there with my mom, and this was early in sobriety. And I tell you, this story I'm about to tell you, if this was the only good thing that ever happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd still be coming back. See, we were sitting around drinking coffee and catching up one day, and my mom had to go to the bathroom. And I thought I'd try one of those new AA things and be of service and go fill up her coffee cup. So I went to get her coffee cup to go fill it up, and in her chair was her wallet. And I thought, man, I'm going to have fun with Mom when she comes back. I'm going to tease her about getting old and forgetful and all kinds of stuff like that. And when she came back, I started teasing her about that stuff, and she said, what are you talking about? I said, come on, Mom. I haven't seen your wallet since I was about 5 years old. And she said, oh, I didn't forget it, hon. I trust you. And that meant the world to me, to have the trust of one of my parents. My father died before I got sober, but it was just a beautiful thing to have that happen. I didn't have an education when I got sober, not even a GED. I cried to my mom about that, and she went into the robe. It was down a little bit far, but she got it. And she said, "You got a GED, honey." And she showed it to me. It had my name on it. I didn't know how that had happened. It took me till I was about 16 or 17 years sober when I realized when I went into the Army, I gave my youngest brother my draft card. And he went down to take the GED test, and he didn't have any other ID except for my draft card. So, after he passed it, he got a GED with Charles Bruce Hartley on it. And he did pretty good, too. So now I'm like really smart. You know, and I got this GED. And I spent a lot of time with young people when I was first sober. And I love young people. They don't have any preconceived ideas about, you know, people that look like me or talk like me or anything else. Like when I showed up new, they just welcomed me in and loved me up and told me I was going to go this place and that place with them. And I whined to one of them about not being able to go to college the way he's going to college. And he said, "Why don't you go to college?" And I said, "Do you know how old I'll be in 4 years if I go to college?" He said, "No, how old are you going to be in 4 years if you don't go to college?" Well, I had a GED, so I did the math. And, I went down and saw the Voc rehab lady, and I won't tell you about all the things we got into while I was taking the different tests. I ended up threatening her once or twice, but she was really good at her job and just brushed me off. And she agreed to send me to school. And 4 years later, I had a bachelor's degree in social work. And while we were standing at our ceremony for getting our social work degrees, the dean of the School of Social Work was mingling amongst us, and you know, he was asking people, "Are you going to go on to grad school?" And some of them said, "Yeah," and he said, "Good, you'll make a fine graduate student." And some of them he asked, and they said, "No, we're going to go to work." And he said, "Good, that's good for you. You should probably get a job." And he come to me and asked me, he said, "Please tell me you're going to grad school." And I said, "I can't." He said, "Why not?" "You did so good as an undergraduate." And I said, "Well, I got married while I was in school, and I have a wife and 2 children that I need to go get a job so I can support them or at least help." And he said, "Can you go to graduate school if I pay for it?" Now, I've got to tell you guys, I'm not very picky about how I drink. My drug of choice is free and more. And he was offering me both on a silver platter. So I took him up on that, and 2 years later, I had a graduate degree in administrative social work. And that is AA and the power of God. I didn't know a thing about going to school. But like I told you all earlier, I always put in 100% of what I had, and God made up the rest every time. Didn't matter if he had to make up 90% or 1%, he made up the rest every single time. As long as I did the footwork, he was right there with me. And I've had a wonderful life in Alcoholics Anonymous. come to Gonzales this weekend, and I've met some new friends and saw some old ones. And, I speak like this a little bit, and I got Facebook friends all over the country. And this is from a guy that just wanted to be left alone and drink in the woods. And I couldn't ask for a better life. Thank you so much for being here and inviting me.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.